Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome on into the swear word. I'm your host, Brandon Swear. And hey, this is a podcast for the chilihead community by the chilihead community. Regardless of your spice tolerance, this is the place for you. Up tonight, we're going to be talking about stacking heat. Does the spice really add up? Also, going to be talking a little bit about this past weekend's events and the overall pepper competition and the great times had. So let's go ahead and kick off episode 143. What's going on, Swear Nation? So glad to have everyone here, whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble, or Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for being here. Once again, I am Brandon Swear, and of course, tonight we're going to be talking about really tackling that question of the burns and does it get hotter than, say, an ultra hot pepper on taco night? And also starting to uncover some of my findings from the most recent weekend where I was able to compete and really kind of get an idea and a test and a baseline for so many different areas that are heavily debated topics within the overall chilihead community. So we're going to talk about the overall breakdowns of what I've been able to uncover just on a nice high level. But the main focal point here, does the spicy food that you eat actually compound the more that you eat of it? Like if you start with a jalapeno and then you add a habanero and then you toss a ghost pepper in there, are you stacking Scoville heat units like weights at the gym? Or is the hottest thing you ate still the cap and everything else just tags along? Let's go ahead and kick off tonight's discussion. All right, so here we go. As you know, I had mentioned before, we had obviously the first ever HTX Spicy Planet kicked off this last weekend, and it was an absolute blast. Everything from amazing vendors that were out there, passionate about what they're doing. I mean, tons of great offerings from spicy chocolates to spicy beef jerky, hot sauces, oils, spicy oils, everything in between. And of course, you had some things to cool yourself down with some nice frozen treats, etc. out that way, spicy mixed drinks. It was a blast and tons of great people, new and old, that I got to meet and hang out with and really get a better understanding of who they are as well. And it was a absolute pleasure to be there. But, one of the main things that went into this whole thing with in mind was the idea of not training beforehand. And of course, I'm once again a little bit strange in the sense that I do not like the idea of prep. So, with that being said, I learned quite a bit during this event, but here as we continue on, I will sprinkle in little nuggets along the way, as well as going to continue to document this and really get a better understanding of how this looks for the upcoming Dallas belt match whenever I actually do start to train. So, one thing mentioned is the heat compounding effect. Is it real? Is it a myth? All these things. While some folks even believe that it all averages out, it's like mixing paint colors. So if you eat a mild pepper and then a hot one, the experience should balance out to medium heat. Well, today we're going to be going into a sort of a thought process through these myths, and we're going to really be able to uncover the science and the sensations to find out what really is happening when you keep piling on these peppers. And just like we did in our Stotchism episode, remember that one where we kind of started to talk about a little bit more of embracing the discomfort to grow? Well, we're going to look back not just at the chemistry, but how our brains and our bodies process the fire. So go ahead, buckle up, sip some milk if you need to, and let's go ahead and turn up the heat. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the myth itself. If you've ever hung out with a chilihead, or maybe you are this chilihead, maybe you're the one that is probably sitting there saying, hey, man, it just keeps getting hotter the more that you eat. And to be fair, while it really starts to feel this way, bite after bite, your tongue is really starting to scream louder and your forehead starts to sweat and you start to feel like you're finishing a marathon and your stomach is asking you, hey, buddy, what exactly are you sending down here? But here's the truth. Capsaicin is more than a compound in chili peppers. It doesn't compound in the same way that we often think. Each pepper has a fixed amount of capsaicin, measured in the total Scoville heat units, or SHUs. So a jalapeno doesn't magically get hotter just because you ate it after a habanero. It stays the same as a jalapeno has always been. So why does it start to feel like it's stacking up? Well, that's simply because it's your body's alarm system. Once again, as we have mentioned before in previous episodes, the TRPV1 pain receptors in your mouth and throat don't reset instantly. Once they've been triggered, they just keep firing. And the lingering burn tricks your brain into thinking that the heat is building, when in reality, it's just your nerves waving the, "Hey, we're still burning down here" flag. So think of it like a campfire. If you throw a log on, you get a flame. If you throw a second log on that flame, the flame grows a little, but it's not like the first log suddenly multiplies in heat. It's still the same when you're burning and at the same rate. It just adds up to the total warmth that you're feeling sitting next to it. And this is where I've learned firsthand through trial and error, time and space, and simply reflecting on the early days of eating spice all the way to now and everything that I've kind of learned along the way. The biggest issue isn't tolerance or retention of tolerance, but it's your own mind playing tricks on you. It's allowing for something uncomfortable to disrupt what you're already comfortable with. That comfort has now become your new standard. So don't let the fact that time has passed keep you from being able to feel confident that you can enjoy the spicy food of any kind. Just like you wouldn't eat something sweet, cut out sweets, and then pick it back up a year later or so after a long stretch of time and go, "Oh wow, that was way too sweet for me to handle." No, you're just simply in a different state of mind. More to come on this as we kind of start to unravel and talk about the different discussions throughout this episode. But let's go ahead and continue the discussion forward. Now let's get nerdy for a second, but in plain English, because this stuff is too cool to hide behind big words. Let's talk about the science of capsaicin absorption. So capsaicin is a fat-loving molecule. When it enters your mouth, it binds to your TRPV1 receptors. These things, once again, little smoke detectors scattered across your tongue, throat, and digestive system. Once these are triggered, they start to send a message to your brain saying danger, fire incoming, urine threat, all of these things. Your brain reacts as if you were literally burning. That's why you sweat, your nose runs, your heart rate goes up. It's fight or flight mode, but you get this from, say, a burrito. Now, here's the kicker. The amount of capsaicin doesn't change just because you ate multiple peppers. A ghost pepper will always be around 1,000,000 Scoville, whether you eat 1 or 5. What changes is how many receptors are being hit at once and for how long they stay active. So eating more peppers isn't compounding the heat like the myth really continues to perpetuate out. It's just saturating more of those receptors, giving your brain less downtime between alarms. Remember in the Spice Invincibles episode where I talked about how rare humans and animals lack these receptors? Well, for them, none of this matters. No receptors, then you got no alarm, and you have no burn. For the rest of us, though, it's like being stuck in a fire drill that doesn't end until the capsaicin is washed away or broken down. Here's where I lean heavily on the fact that if you, as a chilihead, are just starting out with a jalapeno, great. This is your path forward. This is where you start, and this is where you begin your journey as a chilihead. And for all of us, that journey looks a bit different. There is no one set right path for you to go as a chilihead. Just because you find what you love and like and you stay there doesn't diminish your love and care for spice or the spicy community. Now, here's where I believe and now know One who has been to this threshold before can easily handle the same level and interval of capsaicin, again, without proper training. On the other hand, if you have pushed yourself before, you've completed other League of Fire challenges, a local spicy food challenge around your area's restaurants, etc., or maybe just another challenge that's just out there rolling around that you might know of. Or maybe you've sat down, you've chopped peppers, and you've had some ultra hots or some super hots, and you've really gone through the overall experience. Your body is familiar and knows the shock, and knows the feeling, and it knows the ride that it's about to embark on. And here's where I know now and believe that one who has been in this same threshold before can easily handle the same level or interval of capsaicin again without proper training. So ultimately, if you have pushed yourself to say that 1 million to 2 million range, or you've done a challenge at which the challenge is, say, 3 million or above, and you've handled that perfectly fine, that no longer should be a limiting effect because your body, as we've discussed before, has little time over time become seasoned on these TRPV1 receptors, i.e., making it more familiar. Is your body going to remember it entirely? No. But this is where your own mental fortitude and your own outlook on this, plus the fact that you've been there before, add up and end up helping you out in the long run. So here's where it gets interesting. We're going to talk about the heat ceiling versus the endurance effect. Even though the SHUs don't compound, there is something called a heat ceiling. That's the maximum intensity your nervous system can register before it plateaus. So if you eat a jalapeno and then a habanero and then a ghost pepper, your body doesn't multiply the heat into millions of SHU. Instead, it eventually hits a point where your brain just says, yep, this is pain, and all of this pain is pain, and no need for measuring any further. But here's the tricky part, the endurance effect. Even though the peak level of pain doesn't climb forever, the duration and spread of discomfort does. The longer that those receptors are staying active, the more overwhelmed your body feels, and the harder it becomes to push through. Think of it a lot like running. Sprinting 1 mile is tough, but sprinting 10 miles back to back is brutal. The speed doesn't change, but the endurance challenge compounds. That's why chili eating contests get harder with each bite. It's not because the peppers add in SHUs, but it's just because your body's stamina starts to wear down over time. So let's tackle another misconception. The idea of mixing peppers averages out their heat. So you mix a jalapeno at 5,000 SHUs, we'll call it, with a ghost pepper at, say, 1 million SHUs. Some people think that this ultimately creates an average heat around 5,000 SHUs. Makes sense on paper, right? But in reality, not at all. Capsaicin doesn't blend like math. That ghost pepper capsaicin molecules are still firing at full blast, and your receptors can't average them down, so you're still feeling the ghost pepper as the dominant player here. The only time averaging happens is when dilution comes into play. Like if you chop up one ghost pepper into a huge pot of, say, some mild chili, the heat gets distributed, so each spoonful contains less capsaicin. But your mouth doesn't do math. It just reacts to whichever molecule hits the receptor first. So when you get a sauce from, say, a sauce maker, and it's made with, let's say in this case, a ghost pepper, just because it says that it's made with a ghost pepper, this is where the whole averaging / dilution aspect does come into effect. Because now it has to take into consideration the other ingredients and the volume at which that pepper was added to the sauce to really gauge a better understanding of expectations. This does not carry over the same way when you're discussing peppers. If you're just eating pepper for pepper, it never gets hotter than the hottest pepper that you have ate. You're simply just enduring it. So let's talk about another analogy here. Think of it like mixing hot coffee with iced tea. The ratio, if big enough, the tea will help cool down the coffee, sure. But if you take a sip of coffee, followed by a sip of tea, you'll feel the full burn of the coffee first, and then the mild tea second. That doesn't balance out in your mouth, much like when you're eating spicy food. You eat an ultra hot first, and you think, I'm going to eat this jalapeno. It's going to still hit the alarm of the fact that that ghost pepper went in first. Sure, it will not be the same intensity. It's still going to be ringing the same bell. And this is where chili eating contests come in. Competitors know that SHU doesn't stack, or the majority of them should know this by now. But the endurance is what does stack. But the endurance aspect does. So they start to develop tricks to cope. Some competitors coat their mouth with dairy and or fats ahead of time because the capsaicin loves to bind to the fatty molecules, while others, they focus on the overall mental training. Think very stoic. Well, actually, it's very similar to how we talked about in the prior episodes and what I like to lean into in this previous competition. Remembering and reminding themselves that the pain is temporary and that they can endure the discomfort without letting it control them. Simply let the capsaicin, let the peppers, let the hot sauce be the road forward. Ride the road, know that you're okay. Well, some even train their bodies over months by gradually increasing their overall pepper intake, teaching the receptors to become more desensitized. Once again, pointing out the fact that you can start to desensitize these receptors. It's kind of like weightlifting, but it's for your taste buds. But here's the funny part. Even the toughest competitors will admit that once you're deep into multiple rounds of peppers, it feels like that heat is compounding, simply because of the exhaustion that is starting to set in. Your defenses start to wear down, and suddenly that million SHU ghost pepper feels like it's hitting with the force of 2 million. This is where things like endurance training can help you mentally break past these barriers and these points of exhaustion. But mentally and physically, as well as being able to understand your body before you ever enter a competition or ever try to push yourself too hard, it's important to understand your body, but it's not 100% required. If you take the time to understand your body and how it feels best, then when it comes time to prepare for an event like this or some kind of personal best push, you'll know exactly what your body is going to need, how it's going to react, and how to best handle the situation once you're faced with it. For some, being able to enter with how they have trained in the past is their comfort zone and what seems best to them, while others simply, they just start to train and force their body to accept ways that have been prescribed to them as a successful way forward by other chiliheads. Neither of these parts are wrong. One, you're training your body to accept a situation and a training ground at which there is a great chance of success, while the other gives you a better understanding of your body and what you can do now in tandem with your body to maximize your ability while minimizing your overall post-push, post-competition discomfort. So what about the real-world applications? Well, outside of contests, the science affects cooking too. Chefs know that the layering different peppers in a dish doesn't multiply the SHUs, but it does create a bit more of a complex burn. Jalapenos hit quick and fade out quick, but habaneros punch sharp, they have a nice fruity note, and ghost peppers bring that lingering, slow burn, and together they make you feel something more intense, not because of its compounding, but because the overlapping sensations. Sauce makers use this all the time. They blend peppers to not increase SHUs, but to give you different waves of heat that all hit different parts of your mouth. And that's why a sauce with only 200,000 SHUs can sometimes feel hotter than one that's labeled as 500,000. And then there's digestion. Once capsaicin moves south into the gut, things start to change. You might feel the compounding in your mouth, but your stomach and intestines definitely notice when multiple peppers have arrived to the party. And that's why people swear the afterburn is worse than the mouth burn. It's the body's struggling to process so much capsaicin at one time. So the next time that you're sitting there dealing with a multi-different pepper, whether that be a competition, you're sitting down and you're enjoying peppers by yourself, remind yourself the ways in which these peppers burn and the ways that the heat come on are not amplifying. It may be differentiating and spreading out the overall burn to different receptors and different nerve endings throughout your body, but it is not amplifying. So, no, Scoville heat units don't compound. A jalapeno is always a jalapeno, and a ghost pepper is always a ghost pepper. The chemistry doesn't change there. But perception? That's a whole other story. The burn feels like it's stacking because the receptors start to linger. Endurance drops. Your brain can only scream fire for so long before it really starts to panic. Go ahead and recall back to the Spice Invincibles episode. Those folks who don't feel capsaicin at all, imagine them sitting here listening, shaking their heads and saying, "You all are suffering for no reason at all." Or think back to the Stoicism episode, where embracing discomfort becomes the pathway to resilience. Eating peppers back to back is just another training ground for your mental mindset. So, the final analogy that I'll use here is capsaicin doesn't get hotter with each bite, but your experience of it can. Like a song on repeat. The notes don't change, but the longer that you listen to it, the more they get stuck in your head. So the next time that someone tells you that stacking enough peppers to the next time someone tells you that they stacked enough peppers to multiply the Scovilles, you'll know the overall truth here. The fire isn't stacking. It's just staying lit. As I have mentioned before, with the overall breakdown and understanding of how this competition went, I definitely feel very positively about saying this, even though it's a little bit of a disrupting thought within the space, that your overall tolerance, because of your TRPV1 receptors having a more seasoned outlook with the more often and higher heat items that you do endure, also play effect in retention of your overall tolerance. Therefore, I believe that tolerance is not the thing that's truly dropping. It is your overall mental outlook that is playing a trick on you. Whether you embrace the path forward and you think of the stoic outlook of things, or you're the one that is letting your mind trick you into thinking that you can't handle this. You need to remember, the only thing precluding you is you. Get out of your own way, enjoy the burn, respect the pepper, embrace the burn, and always keep questioning the myths. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, let me know down below what part stood out to you the most. If you're interested in keeping up with the overall findings, as I have this nice running tally going of things that I want to monitor, ideas I want to keep track of, and things as simple as the overall hydration effect before entering a competition. Because simply another thing that was tested here was the overall impact on being hydrated. So 2 days before, I really started to buckle down, and the main thing I did was just repetitively drink water, the right kind, nice minerals, make sure there's some trace minerals in there so your body's not just depleting out the overall mineral count that you have. Things like this help overall keep your system like a smooth slip and slide for the capsaicin to just continue on its path. As to where when your body is dehydrated, that capsaicin lingers, it holds, it binds, it sits longer in places that it shouldn't. So, if you want to keep up with more things like this, more episodes will be rolling out, as well as I will continue to be training now that we are about to break into October. And of course, on the 25th, there is the Dallas Belt Match. So look forward to seeing everyone there. That's going to be out at the Dallas Belt Match. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, there is the North Texas Hot Sauce Fest. Do not miss this. If you are in Texas, if you are even remotely close to being able to make it there to Martin House Brewing on October 18th, highly recommend you checking that out. There's going to be tons of great vendors all throughout Texas showcasing their beautiful work of many different outlooks on hot sauce. There sure may be some similar ingredients used in different sauces amongst everyone that's there, but the beauty is the way in which these brilliant minds craft this sauce and the way that it plays together, much like we talked about with the integrating of different peppers within a sauce, delivering a different burn and a different overall outcome. So you get to showcase that right on hand on North Texas Hot Sauce Fest, October 18th. Definitely family friendly. Head on out there. There's going to be things for the kids, things for the family, and of course, things for those young budding chili heads as well as seasoned. So don't forget, new episodes drop every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central. Look forward to, showcasing and sharing with y'all a little bit of training content that will be sprinkled in all throughout October, as well as there's going to be a nice Halloween sauce review overall spread out throughout the month of October. So look forward to all the great things that are going to be happening there, as well as we have sponsorship openings. So if you would like to sponsor the podcast and you have your featured segment on the podcast, reach on out via social media, or you can reach on out through the website and we'll get that squared away. Want to give a quick shout out for our sponsors, podvision.io. If you're looking to grow your brand, start your brand, you hit a bump in the road, you're trying to figure things out, highly recommend checking out podvision.io for all of those needs, as well as webdx.one. Maybe you have a site, maybe you had a guy at one point, you lost contact with him, maybe you never got around to building a site. Highly recommend checking out webdx.one. They make things simple, painless, easy, and best of all, you get to focus on what you do best while they get you looking great online. I'm Brandon Swear, and from everything from the world of hot, this has been The Swear Word.